When it comes to discourse across the content areas, and pretty much with teaching in general, teachers have the mind for their content. And when you present an idea or a strategy, a protocol, pedagogy, anything like that, teachers are great at looking at that and saying, I can tweak that for me. How do I make it personal to me, make it fit my style? How do I make it fit my curriculum? How do I tweak it some to make it fit the way we work in my content area? So I am so lucky to have had this conversation with a couple teachers recently of how we could take the math paired conversation protocol and adjust it to fit the science classroom. And they immediately had a ton of ideas. So let me share with you the thinking that came from that conversation and see how you feel about applying it to science or to other content areas as well. Here we go, the science paired conversation protocol. Now, of course, this is a takeoff from the math paired conversation protocol, which we learned about from the Jeff Swears website. So again, if you go to jeffswears.org, it is a fountain of information with different protocols focused on authentic communication in the content classrooms and focused on discourse. So exactly the same goals as what we're establishing in this course. So please explore the jeffswears.org website and look for others. But we found the math paired conversation protocol here on this website and talked about how to make some adjustments for the science classroom. So here's what we come up with. Using the same template format, we kept to the beginning about the same. So in math, we paraphrase and clarify the problem. And in science, we felt that applied as well, because in most science curriculum these days, there are problems or situations posed or questions posed, and the students have to figure that out. So you may need to tweak the wording a little, paraphrase and clarify the situation, the problem, what it is exactly you're using as a prompt. So students get together in pairs or small groups, and they talk about what are we being asked to do? What is the situation here? An example would be in a unit on plate tectonics, that there is a situation where two very similar fossils were found on separate continents in different sides of the Earth. And how could that be possible? How might we explain this situation, this phenomenon? And so the students will begin talking about, what is this asking me, right? This is asking me to explain how two very similar fossils ended up on opposite sides of the Earth. And so they aren't solving anything yet. They're not explaining anything yet. They're just clarifying. Then they can move into, okay, let's think about the big ideas we've been learning about in science. And they have this discussion and they note the key concepts. Okay, we know about plate tectonics. We know about plate movement. But what are some things in science we've been learning that might help explain this? Someone may say, remember that one picture the teacher showed us where it had the arrows pointing and the plates were moving? Whatever it is they can come up with. They might draw a picture with the arrows, whatever comes to mind. Allowing the drawing and illustrating and labeling is perfect differentiation for learning styles and for English proficiency levels as well. So once they think about, okay, these are all the things we've been talking about that I think could be related to this situation. Now we're going into individual work and then comparing. So we pause the group conversation. Now, each student on their own thinks about what their response would be. What do you think has happened here? What do you think is going on? Individually, they jot down, fill it out, use visuals, use words, write a paragraph, whatever you think is happening. Partner A, do your own. Partner B, do your own. This is where you encourage students at different proficiency levels. I would love you to write this out in a paragraph or sentences. best you can. I expect you to draw and label and show me as much as you can for a beginning proficiency level. Whatever it is, you can differentiate the directions based on literacy levels and proficiency levels. So after each student goes through, so partner A writes, this is what I think is happening, and then justifies that with what key concepts are you drawing on? What do you know from the text or from our videos or from our conversation that makes you believe this? Justify your thinking. Again, this part is individual. Then the students come back together and they have the conversation. This says discuss which solution you could recommend to a problem. Well, the situation I just gave you isn't really a problem. It's just a phenomenon or an occurrence that needs explaining. So I may reword this to say, discuss your thoughts on how this happened, how this came about. So you can change the questions to match. If we were trying to figure out a scientific phenomenon that was more like a problem, this would work. But you can reword it however you want. You want them to discuss, what do you think happened? How can you explain this? And they have a conversation about that. Then each partner, partner A and partner B, talks about what they wrote in the boxes. So what was your thinking? What do you think happened, partner A? And then partner B, what do you think happened? And then here where it says discuss connections between your two theories or between your two ideas. How are your ideas related? Are you thinking along the same lines? Are you on totally different pages? What are you thinking? Then together, take all of your ideas you've generated and create a final explanation. What is your final explanation for what happened in this scenario? And then to extend the thinking and make connections with your partner, co-create a similar problem or similar situation that involves plate movement. So maybe we're talking about when plates move together, or we're going to talk about other phenomenon that happens with plates, or other ways that this movement occurs and what happens because of it. And so they create another situation that can be explained by plate movement. And then we use that for future conversations with the whole group, in small groups, etc. So that's one example of how we may take that same kind of discourse protocol where we have students engaged in individual thinking and then also extended discourse around a topic to add to their critical thinking and move through a conversation, an academic conversation. Now, of course, leading up to this, we would have covered all of the necessary vocabulary. We would have talked about different types of sentences and structures that we'll need to use in this type of conversation. So when you're explaining, this is kind of a cause and effect situation. So you'll have to talk about some of the cause and effect language that they will need, and they can have a very productive academic conversation. So I hope from this example, you can see how you can take a protocol, and even if the situation I share with you doesn't match your situation perfectly, that it's very easy to adjust. And you just keep in mind that the goal is critical thinking, partner talk, and extended problem solving, justifying, critical thinking, negotiating, explaining, all of those skills worked in. And you will have built your own protocol that is perfect for your situation.